we have our four very interesting expert panelists here today. All of them come from different backgrounds, but all of them have in common that they have experience in working with entrepreneurship and digitalization in the Zambia market. So in this session, we will specifically explore kind of the state of digitalization in the Zambian market, some of the recent developments, but also gazing into the future, what's ahead of us. We're also going to be touching upon the opportunities digitalization is providing for businesses in Zambia, as well as some of the challenges as well as opportunities entrepreneurs are facing at the moment due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic that is pushing businesses to become more digital in a rapid pace. So my name is Linda Lohtala. I'm an International Program Officer at Southern Africa Innovation Support Program, and I will be moderating the session today. I'd like to start with our ladies today. So Anne-Alice, if you could please introduce yourself briefly.
Sure, thank you, Linda. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I'm Anne-Alice, but you can call me AA as well because my name is complicated. I've been working for SeedStars in the sub-Saharan markets for 3 years now, currently based in Côte d'Ivoire, West Africa, previously based in Tanzania, East Africa. And we've been working in and going to Zambia for the past 3 years already, specifically as well with the SAIS program, with an investment readiness program that we have for the SADC region that I'll be able to touch on a little bit later.
Thanks so much, Anne-Alice. Let's move on to Lerato. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lerato Mvuli, and I am the project manager for Catalyst for Growth. And I mean, I'll explain what Catalyst for Growth does, but we basically are in monitoring and evaluation. But prior to that, I was head of entrepreneur support for African Leadership Academy, supporting entrepreneurs across Africa, including Tanzania and Zambia.
Thank you, Lerato. And Vanessa, can you please tell a bit more about yourself?
So my name is Vanessa Chavula Menshi, and I work for ZICTA. ZICTA is the ICT sector regulator in Zambia, and I am an ICT Innovation Program Office. Program that we run entails providing support services to ICT entrepreneurs, to innovators, and to startups to just more or less see how best they can develop the different innovations and startups that they have come up with.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Vanessa. And you will get to share a bit more about that in the later stage of the panel. But then last but not least, our gentleman of our panel. So Lukonga, please, if you could introduce yourself.
I'm co-founder and executive director of Bongo Hive, which is an enterprise support organization in Zambia. We also provide technology consulting solutions to various organizations. We have had quite a good relationship with the SAIS program over the past few years, working on multiple programs. We will be able to talk about one of the programs in this session. But we're based in Lusaka, Zambia, with some of the work that we do in the region as well in a number of African countries. So happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Lukonga. And let's move into back to Anne-Alice, to Côte d'Ivoire. So if you could just please share with us briefly more about the SeedStars Readiness Program. What are the main achievements you'd like to emphasize by so far, and how was it benefiting entrepreneurs, and especially in the Zambian market, but overall as well? Thank you.
Of course. Maybe just to give a little bit more context about what SeedStars does. So we are an education company aiming at impacting people's lives in emerging markets through entrepreneurship and technology. So it's really related to the topic of today because we really have a big focus on technology. We've been actually running an investment readiness program with SAIS for the past 2 years in the SADC region. So the objective here is to improve the quality of entrepreneurs in the region and also to save both founders and investors time in the process of fundraising. to really attract capital to the region for early stage entrepreneurs. So we do this through educational programs, but also ecosystem strengthening and networking activities. So the idea really is to have a regional approach and to really benefit and make sure that the entrepreneurs benefit from the complementarities of the different ecosystems that are in the SADC region.
Let's move on to Lerato. So if you could kindly just please describe the testing C4G ecosystem analytics platform in SADC project a bit more to us and share some of your achievements by so far, but also what are you planning to still achieve with the project, and especially in terms of the Zambian market. So please go ahead.
Great. Yeah, so Catalyst for Growth has a monitoring and evaluation platform, basically, that we developed in 2014, specifically for the BDS market. At that time in South Africa, and of course through SAIS, we were then able to scale the platform into the SADC region, specifically Zambia and Tanzania. So through the program as well, of course, whilst on the Catalyst for Growth side, we were testing the platform in a new market. This is a platform that has been used in South Africa over the last 3 to 5 years, and it's been used extensively with around 40 plus BDS providers in South Africa, using the collecting the data and also using that data to inform strategic decision making based on from product design to implementation, as well as to just looking at the impact of the programs that they were running. And we've been working with both BDS providers and funders. So the goal was to also introduce that level of analysis on program impact into the Zambian market. And through the program, we've been able to recruit 5 BDS providers in Zambia in particular. We had a bit of a challenge in recruiting BDS providers in Zambia, and what we did do first was to actually map the ecosystem to just sort of understand who are the players of the Zambian BDS market, and also we conducted market research, which enabled us to really understand the ecosystem better, understand who are the players, what are the challenges, that they might be having, both from the SMME as well as the BDS provider side. So we have quite a lot of data now that we've collected around the ecosystem, the entrepreneurs, what is working, what is not working, what are the challenges that we're very eager to share in the final ecosystem report that we will be launching soon.
Thank you so much, Lerato. And I'm sure that in our audience, we also have people that would be very interested in that kind of data from the ecosystem. And moving on to Lukonga. So if you could briefly explain to us what are some of the main activities and goals in the developing EdTech startups and the EdTech ecosystem project, and how has the project affected the EdTech ecosystem, especially in Zambia?
So we were approached by Ingenie EdTech incubator in South Africa to run a project that would hopefully build a community of EdTech in a number of countries, Tanzania, Botswana, Namibia, and Zambia. So the activities themselves in Zambia involved in executing a boot camp and a set of physical and online events that would bring different players together to not only understand the ecosystem, but also to support the EdTech entrepreneurs more directly in the boot camp. A number of challenges, of course, that came up that were identified in this program was really a lack of research by a number of entrepreneurs, and really just an understanding of pedagogy. It's one thing to just say, this online platform will be available to students out there, but to understand exactly how teaching and learning happens, whether in physical environments or online environments, we noticed that was one of the challenges. And also just being able to prototype. We're hoping that, with time, you can get more players involved, that investors and angel investors and other players that can be involved at the prototyping stage. So the EdTech program itself has been, to a certain degree, a success, and really there's opportunity to do more in that space in Zambia.
So my next question will be to Vanessa. So there was a World Bank report from last year, which was analyzing Zambia's digital transformation, the state of digital transformation, and that commended some of the major improvements, including digital infrastructure, like connecting provincial centers to fiber backbone, increase in the use of mobile phones, as well as increase in the use of digital financial services. So as the representative of the ICT regulator in Zambia, could you, Vanessa, elaborate a bit more on that? Like, how do you see the Zambia market is advancing towards digital transformation, and what kind of future vision you see for that? Thank you.
As a country, we have definitely made a lot of great progress when it comes to digital transformation over the past few years. You have rightly put it. We've seen so much investment in digital infrastructure, and this really is the foundation of building a digital economy. So we've seen digital infrastructure, a lot of investment around there. For example, we have moved from the 2G and the 3G infrastructure to the 4G infrastructure. And we also currently, we've got some operators that have indicated that they have plans of commencing the 5G infrastructure as well. And also, like you said, we have seen a lot of investment in fiber infrastructure as well. And right now the focus is mainly on the last mile. Those that had a chance to look at the ICT market report for 2020 that was recently published by ZICTA, you will note that we recorded an increase in the mobile as well as internet penetration in 2019 as compared to 2020. So really, we've made a lot of great improvements around that. And generally, we've seen that a lot of businesses across the different sectors of the economy are adopting digital technologies in their businesses. So, for example, in digital financial services, we've really evolved over the last few years. We've got our mobile monies and things like that. We've got so many e-health platforms coming up. We've got so many e-learning platforms, for example. So we've really evolved. And the future vision, I believe, is really around ensuring the continued development of these digital platforms. It's also around ensuring that these technologies are widely utilized, just leveraging on this critical mass where so many people are now connected and just developing platforms, digital platforms that could make our lives even better. So what we do is that we have a program that we call an ICT innovation program. And this is a program where we provide support services to ICT innovators, to digital entrepreneurs, to startups. And this support is tailored to assist them to grow their different business ideas, their different ICT innovations, and the different projects into viable ventures that could enhance our way of life even further.
And I would actually like to invite Lukonga to comment on that. Can you echo this that Vanessa is saying as the founder of Zambia's first tech and innovation hub? How does that kind of digital transformation, how does that translate to your work? Like, have you seen a rise in this kind of digital enabled tech startups?
There's some statistics that are pretty interesting, I think, to look at, particularly in the report that ZICTA just released. If you look at, for example, mobile transactions, which the value of them increased by 113% in just 1 year. The volume, of course, was about 35%. Internet penetration, I think there's a marginal increase, probably like 6%, right? But if you see how the money is moving in the economy, right, and that people are using more digital platforms, that's a good eye opener for a number of businesses that want to do business in Zambia and in the region. That now you can actually run a much more global business than before because the money can easily move around much more easily. That's really important, I think. One of the other things that really stands out when you look at the effect of COVID and adoption of technology is and this is something very interesting for tech startups, right? In terms of talent, how you hire people, where you hire them from. Just this morning, someone was talking about how they were hiring, a South African company was looking for top talent on the continent, and they're looking for any developer across the continent, right? So in terms of your talent pool, that has changed just over the past year. Of course, it was there before, but it has been accelerated to now having startups locally and regionally being able to look at talent from anywhere on the globe and see them as potential employees. So that's an interesting shift as well, even for Zambian, particularly Zambian tech startups and tech talent, where we have Zambians who are now working for global companies right in Zambia. So you can look at it from the other way as well, in that startups in Zambia are also competing for the same talent that global companies are competing for. And that changes the game for a lot of the startups. But it's interesting how all these are playing out in the local economy and also just the global economy, and it has an impact on how startups really can start and grow both locally, and how big the pie is. It's no longer just in Lusaka, it's no longer just in Zambia, it's now a global pie that startups must look at being part of or taking a chunk out of. So definitely the game has changed.
Thank you so much, Lukonga. And that's such a good point. Like, it's a global market. That's also like a result of the digital transformation. But I would actually still want to bring Lerato in this discussion, because you were telling us that you're bringing your product to the market both in Zambia and Tanzania. So could you please elaborate, how do you find the differences in terms of digital transformation in these different markets? So if we compare Zambia and Tanzania and South Africa.
Yeah, so definitely from our research in the time that we have been working in Zambia, we did find that there is a much lower percentage use of ICT tools, right, in Zambia. The adoption was very low, but we also found challenges just from an education point of view, as well as from an ICT skills point of view within the Zambian market, that made adoption of a platform very, very difficult. But that is very materially different when you go into, say, South Africa, of course, and Tanzania, where challenges are there, but the biggest challenge that you would find in Tanzania is not necessarily the tool, but the language in which the tool is presented, right? So in Zambia, we did not have the language issue where our platform is in English, but we had the adoption issue of the tool itself, whereas in Tanzania, we had the issue with the adoption of the tool because of the language in which it was presented. South Africa, we don't have that challenge in terms of technology, I think, and that might be, and I must qualify that might be because a lot of the BDS providers that we work with in South Africa are also based in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, in the bigger cities where infrastructure is pretty strong. So for us, I mean, this has been a very big lesson, especially with regards to the platform and the tool itself. There is a way to go in terms of making it user friendly, but also just using what are the tools that are already in use in terms of technology in the market. You're seeing that it's still quite basic, your basic Microsoft Excel that's been used here and there, even, and that is in places where data is being collected to begin with.
Thank you so much. That was a very valuable lesson learned. And what I'm picking from this, that we kind of have the both sides. We have the transformation going on, but then we still have a lot of work to be done in terms of digital skills. Then I would like to move back to AA. It's really hard to talk about digitalization these days without mentioning the ongoing COVID pandemic. And Alice, if you could please just share with us some of the challenges entrepreneurs have faced during this new normal when trying to push their operations to become more digital, but also some of the opportunities that have emerged.
Even though when you look at the figures from the World Bank in particular, the internet penetration situation in Zambia is actually better than in some of the neighboring countries. And of course, it has improved thanks to COVID. But one major challenge could be the access to internet of your clients. A second challenge that actually Lukanga was mentioning earlier, and I think it's both an opportunity and a challenge, is indeed talent. Because when it comes to making your products either more digital, either making your digital products more robust, you need actually tech talents to do that, and really good ones. So one challenge that entrepreneurs are facing, and that's the feedback that we actually got from them, is finding the right talents for this. Ideally locally, because the idea of building your business in Zambia is also to have an impact on the local market, right? But also internationally. And as Lukonga was saying earlier, now it's a global competition, and getting the right talent to make sure that your product is adapted to your client can really be a challenge. And agility is really a key concept in entrepreneurship. Whether there is a COVID crisis or not, you cannot take anything for granted when you're an entrepreneur, right? So having this brutal, massive evolution all of a sudden really forces entrepreneur to actually have this agile mindset, and really always testing their assumptions and going in a very lean way. And that is actually a very healthy way for growth as an entrepreneur and a business. And the second opportunity I see, and Lukonga was also mentioning it, so I really want to second you on that, Lukonga, is the mindset when it comes to the region. Because we saw many Zambian entrepreneurs actually considering expanding to other markets in the region, which was not necessarily a consideration they would have before the crisis. And that's also why at SeedStars we really focus on technology and digital products, because we really think that once you have a robust digital product, it's way easier to scale your business and your impact. So that's, I think, a really great opportunity for entrepreneurs if they combine really this agile way of building their business with also keeping their mind open and dreaming big. I think that's a great opportunity coming from COVID-19.
Lukonga, do you want to add on that?
I would maybe talk about the general challenge that we still have, particularly for Zambian entrepreneurs, which is really access to early stage funding. That still remains a big gap, and there are ways to solve for it. And the past year, I think past year there have been some initiatives. There's a local angel investor network that's just started. We have seen few more players in the space that are putting more money for the startups, and I think that reducing that gap between the startups and investors is really important. We're not saying everyone needs $170 million that Flutter we've got, but it's really important that we create the various stages of funding that are important for different stages of the entrepreneur. And we see that in Zambia now, we're getting to a point where we're asking questions around, okay, where are the high net worth individuals? How do we get money from them? But also, how do we make sure that there's a proper track record, a good track record of startups as they get funding in the different stages, that those are the ones that are, creating the good impression that Zambia is a good destination for investment, and also that you can launch businesses into the region from Zambia.
I would like to actually continue with you, Lukonga. So if you could touch upon what kind of market opportunities digitalization is offering businesses in Zambia.
Yeah, I do think that when you follow the money, what you will see is there's a rise of fintech. Not just on the continent, but in Zambia. We've run a number of cohorts now of fintechs, startups addressing opportunities in the fintech space, and you will notice that various industries from the perspective of finance and technology, you can do a lot of things in any sector, whether it's in ag, whether it's in ed tech and other spaces. And so that's sort of the lens that you can look at this from, and as we unlock opportunities for how the money moves in the economy, we are seeing that the barriers that used to exist and the friction that was there in moving money around is much more reduced. And that way it unlocks opportunities for other sectors in how people transact, how people pay for services, and how those are delivered. One of the challenges, of course, that still exists is in the last mile space, right? So last mile logistics is still a huge problem. I think that over the past year with COVID, we've seen more startups that have grown in that space. Delivering anything from food to building materials. So that's really important, and then that's allowing for a lot more companies to get closer to the consumers or to the clients. So that's a space that still needs to be unlocked, and there are a lot more players getting into that space. But reducing that gap between the last mile consumer and the business is where some of the opportunities really lie. And so there are opportunities and challenges both in the local market, but I think that COVID has helped to unlock and to accelerate adoption of particularly of various and alternative payment solutions. And I think that's really driving e-commerce and driving a different way of doing business that in normal circumstances was really restricted to traditional ways, which is, of course, walk to the shop and buy your goods and leave. Those are some of the opportunities that exist in the Zambian market. Yeah.
And I would actually want Lerato to touch upon the same topic. So if you could elaborate, how have digital tools and platforms widened the market in the SADC region and created new opportunities for entrepreneurs?
I mean, definitely with the market has widened, especially with African Free Trade Agreements now in full effect that happened. And you also then are having just the fact that your market is no longer just, for example, with C4G being an SMME itself, our market is no longer just in South Africa, but we also are finding that we can be able to support, strategic decision making in Tanzania, in Zambia, just across Africa because of the ability to develop a tool and be able to deploy it, on cloud. And this is the same that many SMMEs across are seeing. I mean, what has happened, especially with COVID in the education space, as we've seen a lot of with educational entrepreneurs, is the advent of online learning, for example, that has now just not only limited people to and BDS providers to supporting 50 entrepreneurs that they could now, put into a room and be able to cater for. But now you can actually support entrepreneurs, in their thousands because of this online platform and the fact that they have access to just going over the lessons at their own pace and whenever they need they need to go over it. From my view, Zambia still has quite, a very informal market. And I think the challenge to the BDS providers in Zambia is how do you formalize? You have 90% of an informal market right now, and you are talking about digitalization. I mean, even in South Africa, our township market, just digitalizing that township market is work in itself. So the challenge is how do you formalize that market and then digitalize it? Or is digitalization then the way in which that market can be formalized? There are lots of opportunities, but I do think that the BDS providers like SAIS and Bongo Hive have a lot of work to do in Zambia to just ensure that ICT skills, digitalization actually happens. And, we're here, of course, to provide the data that you need to enable you to do that.
Vanessa, digital skills are obviously a prerequisite for digital entrepreneurship. And in Zambia's 7th National Development Plan, it's mentioned that the aim is to have ICT mainstreamed in schools as well. But how would you reflect upon what is the current kind of skills pool that is available in terms of the ICT sector in Zambia, and how do you see that developing in the future, near future?
We do have the compulsory ICT subject in the Zambian primary education curriculum that has been introduced by the government. So this is something that is really going a long way in ensuring that ICT skills are inculcated from the onset. And when we talk about ICT skills, this is really just talking about how people are able to use the various digital platforms, how people are able to use digital devices, how they can create content, how they can communicate, how they can access information and things like that. So in terms of the skills that we have in Zambia. I know that when we look at our universities, for example, we have a lot of diverse ICT-related courses, but perhaps the question could be that are we churning out what the industry needs in terms of the numbers? And really, we are getting into the fourth industrial revolution, so we are definitely going to need a lot of experts to really lead us into that. But into the future, we are working on the ICT policy, and ZICTA has been working closely with the Ministry of Transport and Communication to bring this forward. So I can definitely confirm that issues to do with ICT skills will definitely be at the center of that.
I would actually want to invite Lukonga to comment on this, because I know you initially founded Bongo High to address that skills gap in tech. So how would you see, do you see that the skills gap has changed from the time you first started Bongo Hive?
At a global level, right, industry level, things are moving so fast, right? And so we have to play catch up, at the same time try to stay ahead, right? And it's like twice the work that we have to do. And so it's not just a Zambian problem, right? It's a regional, global problem. The way that we handle it at Bongo Hive is to develop the partnerships with industry players that bring that type of context to the work we do, and deep knowledge of different industries and the talent that's needed. And so our work, for example, with Facebook, around the Facebook developer circles is important. Peer-based learning is really key in understanding learning technology. And so our work with Dufuna, for example, and a couple of other technology providers is important to provide the industry knowledge directly to the developers themselves through a Bongo Hive, whether it's providing this physical space or virtual space for that learning to happen. That is important. And we have a number of companies that then come to us to hire talent. Some of our talent, for example, has then gone, and have gone out to work for other companies. Just last week, we had one of our interns, for example, was headhunted by Facebook. So it's interesting that we are able to provide those types of linkages with industry as a Bongo Hive, but at a much higher level than that. I think the work that ZICTA, the ministry and other players play is really important. That way you have systemic solutions to the systemic challenges that we have. So, and particularly in this context where we are talking about Finland and Zambia collaboration, there's a lot that we can learn from the Finnish around this whole triple helix model, where this collaboration between academia, private sector, and other players is important. It's something that Zambia needs, and that collaboration is what improves the quality of the talent, because you want academia to work with private sector to make the learning relevant, right? We need government to institute the right policies so that is the right level of investment, and other things that can provide to ensure that we are working together. And I guess for the Finns, that's an opportunity in this local market to be able to bring models that enable us to churn out the right type of talent from our institutions, but also to make industry a player as well, active player in making sure the content that's delivered in institutions is the right content, but also that the job market is available for this type of talent, because it's not just about people learning the right skills, but are there jobs, right? But I think collaboration is really important for us to move to the next stage. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I think that was a very relevant comment for our audience as well here. But I think at this stage, I'm going to wrap up so that we can move forward to the questions and answers section. Do you have any final words you would like to say before we go to the questions and answers? So if we just go a quick round, AA, would you like to say something?
Yes, I won't be long, but I think that the situation in Zambia is quite promising, at least the evolution. So I really can't wait to see what the ecosystem looks like in like 2 years' time. I think the evolution is very fast, and I'm really excited about that at a personal level.
Thank you. Lerato, any final words?
Yeah, same here. Like where we will continue to be studying the ecosystem and mapping the ecosystem of Zambia to see how it transforms over the next couple of years. And I guess the challenge to the SMMEs is to hold the BDS providers accountable when it comes to, relevant support that is provided to them. So it's not just supply driven, but that support for SMMEs actually now starts coming from the demand side as well, including their need for the skills that they actually need, such as the ICT and digitalization skills. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you, Lorato, for that comment. Vanessa, any final words?
Because there's so many challenges that digital entrepreneurs face and just innovators. And this is something that is very important for us to really move forward as a country. We need to invest a lot more in supporting innovation from the grassroots level, technology, startups, and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to having a lot more players in the ecosystem just coming on board and sort of putting our heads together and see how best we can nurture our innovations, our local innovations that are coming up.
Lukonga, do you have any final words you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, last week someone made a comment that after visiting a number of African countries and working in them, Zambia seems to be the most open, progressive fintech regulatory environment on the continent, and you can tell in the relationships that are created and how regulators, even like ZICTA, play in the different industries. And this is the type of relationships that we have built as Bongo Hive, but also it's interesting to see how the ecosystem has grown over the past few years, where these are cordial relationships that we have with the regulators like ZICTA, and the SEC and the central bank and others. And so in this particular context, we're talking about how Finnish businesses can also operate in the Zambian market. This should be a good thing, right? And Zambia should be seen as an opportunity for them to launch into the region because of the regulatory relationships and environment that's available in Zambia that allows for business to happen or take place in a much more progressive manner. So there's a lot of hope, but also that there's a good environment that's available for people to do business in a good way. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lukonga. I think that's a perfect moment to finish the panel discussion and go towards the questions and answers. Welcome all to the questions and answers section of the panel. Thank you so much for our panelists. We have all our 4 panelists here today answering your questions. And thank you for your eager participation in the chat. So we have 10 minutes for questions and answers. I hope we have time to answer all of your questions. And if not, feel free to reach out to your panelist after this panel as well. So I'll start with Lukonga with a question we had in the chat. So how is digital marketing growing in Zambia for the Zambian entrepreneurs to really cope with the struggles due to COVID pandemic? So can you please comment on that?
Good question. I think that the opportunities are there because of COVID, right? There are challenges, of course, on the other end as well. You can make assumptions that people have access to data and have access to the internet. But the challenges in Zambia is that we are sparsely populated. So you can make assumptions about, Lusaka, about the Copper Belt. But the real challenge is there when you are off the line of rail. I think for those areas, it's still a challenge to reach them via your typical digital channels. And you need to rethink how you reach out to clients outside the line of rail, or at least, where there is no connectivity, because there are many places where there's not enough connectivity. And that's the real challenge particularly for Zambia, I think. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking if Vanessa wants to comment on that that question as well, in terms of if there has been an increase in digital marketing amongst the business providers in Zambia due to COVID.
you, Linda. So definitely there has been an increase in the use of digital marketing among various businesses in Zambia. This is for the simple reason that it's actually cost effective to carry out digital marketing activities, various digital marketing activities. So certainly we've seen a lot of growth in that area. And rightly put, the COVID pandemic has really exposed the potential in that area as well. And a lot more businesses have come on board and realized the potential of digital marketing. So generally, it has evolved, and we've seen a lot of growth and usage among the different business providers out there.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. And I would actually want to continue with you because there was a question in terms of internet penetration. So there was a comment that students need to access online learning has affected that significantly. So could you please elaborate what can be done to reduce the cost of internet, especially for students?
Okay. So actually, I would like to say that the cost of internet has actually been reduced significantly. We've seen a reduction in for example, the 1 GB data bundles and things like that. They have reduced quite significantly. The cost of devices also has reduced quite significantly right now. So I think these are one of the reasons why we've seen an increase in the internet penetration rate. So it's really around issues to do with affordability and how the cost has gone down. Also, it's around the digital skills as well. People are now able to access digital platforms. A good number of people do have the skills to access digital platforms. So it's around those areas that we have seen an increase in the internet penetration at the moment.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I'd like to invite Lerato in at this stage. So we have a lot of ICT companies coming from Finland and looking into expanding to Zambian market. So Lerato, what kind of advice you would have for these Finnish ICT companies who are in the audience today?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Linda. Well, that's a bit of a hard one. It seems like Lukonga would be best placed to answer that one. But just in our experience working with Zambia, definitely, sparsely geographically, it's just the they're not necessarily concentrated as they would be in South Africa. So you would have to put that into consideration. There are, of course, as I've mentioned before, the ICT skills that if you're looking at investing in this country, you also then need to consider the skills that are required. So a full program, I would even say, of just funding the likes of Bongo Hive to just really roll out programs that would enable the people to actually use whatever tools that you might be bringing to the market. So your ICT solution should never be decoupled from a program that actually goes with education, not only on the platform itself, but also on how to use it and being actually patient to allow adoption in that matter. So. Yeah, so I think if that was one lesson that we took as C4G, that would be it. To say, couple it with an extensive education program on ICT.
Thank you so much, Lerato, for that tip. Lukonga, do you want to briefly add on to that, what Lerato was just saying?
Can you restate the question, just so?
Any tips for the ICT companies from Finland who are here today what to take into consideration when entering the Zambian market?
I think the most important thing, first of all, is to understand the maturity level of the ecosystem and not to treat sort of the African continent as a whole. So really understanding what Zambia is good at, what we're not good at, and accepting that as reality. And really understanding the local context. So working with locals to understand all these various factors that would either make a business successful or not, whether it's talent, whether it's money, whether it's internet adoption, device adoption, literacy levels. I think understanding the local context is really important. And so it's not just a case of throwing money at a problem. It's really developing the relationships, having a good understanding of the local scenario, and also just being able to execute. I think a lot of it is really just about understanding the context. And once you do that, you can adjust your strategy to fit the local context much better. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those words. And Alice, you mentioned in the discussion that technology is really in the focus for Seed Stars. So could you please elaborate what you think in terms of tech are the next big trends that will be affecting the entrepreneurial space in Zambia, let's say in the next couple of years?
Yes, sure. So indeed, as you mentioned, we are mainly focusing on technology, as we think that startups who have a technological product are then in a better position to scale their impact in their business. So when it comes to technology and Zambia, of course, you have different technologies that are emerging. We were talking about digital marketing, which is not a technology per se, but which is a technological trend. So I guess it really depends on which industries you're looking at. So for example, when you're looking at the agricultural space, there are a lot of technologies that are being tested at the moment and tried. So of course you have the drones technologies, but you also have like small irrigation and drop-to-drop irrigation technologies that are being tested. There are a lot of innovations going on as well in the education sector at the moment. And I guess the other panelists can also second me on that, since it's one of the industries and areas where Zambian startups are the most active. So the technology is really depending on the sector, the area. But I guess there are a lot of Zambian young people and students that are getting more and more trained and that are understanding that with the COVID crisis, technological literacy is more and more important. And I can really predict that in the coming years, more and more will be available in the Zambia. And that's really good news for the ecosystem, I would say.
Thank you so much, AA. And just to briefly touch upon the EdTech, there was a question that I will direct this to Lukunga. So there was a question in the chat that what can be done to reduce ICT barriers to entry?
I seem to have lost you there, but I think the question is how we can reduce ICT barriers to entry in education and providing low cost or cost-effective devices. Whether there is funding out there, I think there are various ways to look at this. Education is a tough sector to be in because the business models there for startups are not easy. To make money in a space where, in a sector where it is more or less a need for a lot of people, but also their buying power is so low, you almost have to leave it to a government, to do it. Of course, there are ways to get around it, but what I'm really trying to say is that the challenges are great. We need a more collaborative approach to solving for this. It's not just about saying, I have devices or I have content or I have internet. There are a number of areas there, and that's why I think that whenever someone gets into a space like education or health, they really have to understand the policy environment. They have to understand what the other players are doing and try to develop a more collaborative business model, as opposed to thinking that as a startup, a founder, you can solve for problems in education alone. And that's why when you're talking about whether things are cost effective or not, whether there's funding out there, I would say there are different pieces of this that can be solved for, but you have to take a really long-term approach to creating really successful models in education and health in this part of the world. And therefore, you need to be patient, you need to have a lot of money, but also you need to be able to create the collaborations and the partnerships that will enable you to solve for some of the big barriers that you will face even as you run the business. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lukonga. Unfortunately, I think I see our time is almost up. There's one question in the chat directed to Vanessa. I was thinking if you could quickly answer that what Zikta is doing to democratize access to USSD infrastructure. So just a brief one before we close and wrap up.
Hi, Linda. Could you please go over the question one more time?
Yes, so what Zikta is currently doing to democratize access to USSD infrastructure? Tafazwa is asking in the chat.
Okay, thank you for that question. That's something that we do get quite a bit from innovators and startups. And normally the concern is usually around the cost. And this is to say the cost is quite heavy on innovators or startups, new entrants, people who are just starting out and don't have the capacity to afford the cost of the USSD infrastructure. Unfortunately, this is low. So, but what we have tried to do as Zikta is that under our innovation program that we are currently running, what we've tried to do is that we have tried to see how best we can provide a USSD code or the USSD codes for testing purposes to innovators that to promising innovators that we identify on our program. So we provide them with an environment where they can test these using a test USSD code, not really for commercialization purposes, but for testing purposes. So that's what we have tried to do in order to assist innovators in that area.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. And now our time is up. So thank you for our panelists today for this insightful discussion. I will invite you to please stay on the call and maybe answer some of the questions on the chat, because not all questions were answered. So if you have any input you'd like to share with the people asking the questions, please do so. And I thank you, audience, for your engagement and participation. And I think we're going to have a brief break, but before that, I will just give the floor to Jan.
Yes, thank you, Linda. Thank you, panelists, and thank you to the audience for your tricky questions, which I'm glad our panelists were able to answer. And I would like to reiterate what Linda just said. So I'd ask the panelists to stay on for a bit if there are any more questions coming up in the chat. We will break now for 5 minutes. So we will reconvene at 1400 hours. Zambia time, that's 1500 hours in Finland. Enjoy your cup of coffee.